Words won't love the world the way creativity will love the world. Words will not change the world the way creativity will change the world. Nonetheless, it's my job to try to present some things that help to inspire us and move us forward as creators through words. So I want to start with these words. This is a quote. I'm going to give you just a second to take a look at this quote and consider it. The individual artist is happy in their creative work. Some of you had very different responses in this room to that statement. I want to finish the quote. This is a quote by Upton Sinclair. And the fact that practically all art is a great tragedy or is tragic does not change this thesis. I want to talk tonight for the next few minutes about creativity. It hurts so good, does it not? We're going to briefly try to understand our creative instinct. So I want to answer three basic questions, and I hope these questions that you identify with them. I want to cover, first of all, what compels me to create? Secondly, why does it have to hurt to create? Thirdly, is it really worth it to create? And I hope that some of you have asked that question and you're identifying with some of these things. Before we get to those questions, though, I want to just get two things grounded. I want us to agree on two assumptions. First of all, the definition of create. We could go all night and not come in agreement on this, so I'm asking you to concede here for the sake of the next 15 minutes, the definition that I'm going to move forward with. So create comes from a Latin root, which is cur. And when we talk about roots of words, usually we're talking about something that was a piece of poetry when it first came into existence, right? So cur, that sound in someone's mouth, somehow reflected the idea of something coming up from the earth. And so we get a very ancient root, cur. And that eventually becomes the word create, and we forget that it has a phonetic, onomatopoeic, poetic relationship to the thing of which it speaks. Cur, to create, ultimately to grow. I'm going to use, as we move forward, a definition by a neuropsychologist, Dr. Huberman from Stanford. To create is to present known objects in a novel way, resulting in a new revelation. By the way, the word novel, its root is the word new. So we could say to present a known object or known objects in a new way, resulting in a new revelation. That's what we're doing. And I want to give you an example of that here. This is a cow, of course. Concept one. Okay? We're going to take known objects. Known object number one is a cow. Known object number two is a car. We're starting very basic. Now, Huberman describes the bringing together of two objects into one unit as not necessarily in and of itself a creative act. So Huberman, in fact, brings up a fishbowl with wings on it and says, you can't put that in a museum. That's not actually creative. That's bringing two concepts together, but it's not creating a new revelation. Well, I think probably it's not black and white. I think it's probably a continuum. I don't want to say that this is not art. I don't want to say that this is not creative, because kudos whoever took the time to find shag carpet and glue it all over their Mini Cooper. But I would agree it doesn't quite create a new revelation, does it? What might better create a new revelation is to take the concept of cow and car and create a sculpture. out of it. So we've all had different responses to that, but I think it took all of us to some degree to a new place. There's new revelation in that, and those revelations don't have to be understood consciously. Those revelations are changing you subconsciously. You might come to terms with some of that as you reflect on this after the fact. Well, let's move on. The second thing I want to get grounded with, first of all, we're grounded on the definition, taking known things, using them together in a novel way to create a new revelation. And quite frankly, we don't really care who gets that revelation. How many songwriters or poets in this room have created something fantastic that changed your life that no one else ever heard or read? Yes. Exactly. Note objects in a new way that changed a life through new revelation. And if that life is just yours, it's as beautiful as if it's the whole world. So let's come to terms now with the thesis, and this is the Upton Sinclair quote from the beginning. Here's our thesis. Individual artist is happy in their creative work. The fact that practically all great art is tragic does not change this. Is this qualitatively true? Can we agree with this thesis? Is this true in your experience as a creative? And by the way, I have come to loathe the word creative, but I cannot disown it because it is the very heart of who I am. But it's used so trivial, is it not? I was painting a mural one time at a company, and I happened to be in the same hallway where the board of directors was meeting. And right in the middle of a big meeting, an executive director opened the door, stuck his head out and say, "Hey, Tom, come in here for a second. You're creative." And I walked into the boardroom, and they were spread out on the table was all the branding packages from a branding company that the executives were looking at. And in that moment, because I was creative, they wanted me to just vomit my 2 cents in 30 seconds. Sometimes the world trivializes creativity, and the word creativity gets trivialized as a result, but we can't disown it, can we? So I tend to like to think of the word creativity less as an adjective and more as a verb. When we describe each other's identity through adjectives, it tends to be less than adequate. We shouldn't qualify each other or what we do in adjectives, but in verbs. I create. You create. Right? So, is it qualitatively true that you're happy in your creation even though sometimes the project and even sometimes the final result is tragic? Well, I can't speak for you. That wouldn't be fair of me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the curtains a little bit on Tom, and I'm going to sort of expose what it feels like to live a creative life. A day in the life of me. So as some of you know, I've been working in New York a lot lately. So we're going to take this day in the life as if I am returning from New York, coming back home. So I stop at a rest area to go to the bathroom. And I'm smitten by the shape, line, and sculpture of the urinal. I'm in good company, by the way, for those of you that know Marcel Duchamp. But it's real. I actually found myself thinking, how could I pull my phone out and get a picture of this midstream? I told you, full disclosure, we're opening the curtains. I get home and I think there's a million things I should do. I have designs due. I have ideas I want to work on, but I can't handle the overflow of ideas And so I take a nap. Then I get up. I've got energy. I work on a project. I work on painting a mural for a little bit. Then I turn and I look at the plant that I just spent $50 on last week because it was the perfect finishing piece of my studio. But when I went to New York, I left it untended and it's dead. I pour myself a cup of coffee. I visit the Museum of Art in Philadelphia, and for 30 minutes, I stand in front of a Jasper Johns. On the way home, I'm so overwhelmed with the fact that I could never produce such quality of art that I take a nap. I then wake up, I got to go to Lowe's to pick up some things for a project that I'm on, but my brain gets going again, and I've driven an extra 20 miles before I realize that I've passed the Lowe's exit. I finally get to Lowe's. I spent 45 minutes looking at color chips, and I'm not even there to buy paint. I come home and I pour myself a cup of coffee. I then, in a meeting with my boss, try to convince him that Dumbledore and Harry look a whole lot better without any front lighting whatsoever. Fail. I go down to the kitchen. I can't work anymore with this mess around me. I have to clean the kitchen before I'll get anything done. I'm useless without a clean kitchen. I pour myself a cup of coffee. Then I get back to the designing, but it's not going so well because the kitchen's a mess because I found that I was overwhelmed by trying to clean the kitchen up. So I get the mail. I ignore a 3-month past due bill from Waste Management. Then I find a bag, and I'm so overtaken by the workmanship that I spend $300 on a new book bag. I drink some whiskey. It's getting about bedtime, so I put on a movie that will inspire my creativity. Wes Anderson. I go to bed with all the wonderful thoughts that Wes has left me with, but the night is a busy one. My thoughts are going rambunctiously all over the place, out of control. I can't sleep. I wake, new ideas, jot them down, try to go back to sleep, dreams, nightmares. I wake up feeling like I'm hungover. I pour myself a cup of coffee. I add a little bit of whiskey. I check the texts. A friend has texted me. We have a great brainstorm session together about creative ideas. And finally, I say yes to another project I absolutely have no time for. And so now I put my own artwork up here, which I just created on the spot. This is a work by Tom Ryan called The Creative Life, 2023. Ouch. It's not easy, is it? And we laugh about it, but we all know that it's deadly, deadly serious. Nevertheless, I will wake up tomorrow and I will create. So now we get to the 3 questions. What compels me to create? I want to read a little bit from David Mamet. Those of you that don't know David Mamet is a playwright and a screenwriter. And this book was given to me by an art mentor when I was in my 20s. And it's probably the most important thing that I have ever read as a creative person. Which of us has not seen, heard of, or dreamt of emulating an artist, a painter, a writer, whatever, who quit the city and enjoyed the wild, who found raptured in contemplation of that which the natives took for granted? Beautiful views, clean water, deep woods, clear beaches, unspoiled native honesty. Well, so we went there, and we did enjoy it, and we either wrote or we painted about it, or we told our friends of it, or we were discovered by those who trailed in the wake of free spirits like ourselves, so that all that remained in the end of that beach, of those woods, of that indigenous accent was now just our depiction of it. But I guess it was bound to happen anyways, of course. But it occurred to me in that moment that we were the disease. Speaking of that new thing which we discovered, which changed our lives, that revelation, but now having been noticed and pointed out, it suddenly, in that moment, has become old and no longer novel. But we simply could not stop ourselves from doing it. And I'm not going to leave you there with David Mamet, because he doesn't end quite so existentially, but we'll get back to that at the end. It's in us. So what compels us to create? First of all, we require order. I know that's hard for some creative people to face, but we all are craving it all the time. We need things to be ordered, even if we embrace and like chaos. For those of you who follow chaos theory at all, and I didn't put this into my presentation because I knew I'd spin off way too long. Fractals, which are mathematical equations, as complicated, much more complicated than the human mind could ever get their mind around, put into visual form in an attempt, computers attempting to create absolute chaos, always discover a pattern. So if a computer is processing into a fractal, an equation that takes that computer 6 months, it will eventually find a pattern. The pattern is inevitable. Order is in everything. And as a human being, you're seeking that order all the time. Those of you that are familiar with the idea of Gestalt theory is simply a behavioral theory, which is now science. Observations made in the early 1900s about the way our minds work. And the fact of the matter is there are 10 principles in Gestalt theory of things that your mind, when it comes through your eye port, your mind will put order to things that aren't there. For example, you may take random shapes, but your mind will always try to make those shapes into something. Some of you designers may have followed the whole car grill as face issue. It's a true, real design issue in the automobile world. You see some companies that embrace the idea, look, the grill is going to be interpreted by the human eye as a face. Let's go ahead and make it aggressive. Ram. Let's go ahead and make it cute. Jeep. Whatever. All those companies are embracing the idea that you are going to see it, whether you're cognizant of it or not. You're going to see it as a face because you are seeking order and relationship all the time. That appeared as chaos to you for about 10 seconds. And your mind immediately sought and found the pattern. You are always seeking order, and you cannot stop that about yourself. You cannot change that about yourself. You are compelled to create because creation brings order into your universe. And when you find order in your universe and it is expressed in the larger universe, it has the potential of new revelation, meaning it has the potential of changing lives and society. Therefore, you must create. We require story. It's the second reason you have to create. And this was revealed to us probably most prominently through the film industry, the juxtaposition of images, which is at the very heart of the film industry. Those of you that are studying film know that one of the most powerful exercises you could do is limit yourself. You have no motion, you have no sound. You have nothing but 15 images. Cut them together to tell a story. Because that is the heart of film. When the human mind, the human eye, through the eye port into the human eye, 2 images are juxtaposed, you will always seek a story. You're already seeking a story. Some of you already have this story figured out, but wait, I put an image next to it. Now what's the story? That crazy neighbor is at it again, and he's going to kill that kid. or whatever. That was mine, whatever it is for you. Case in point. Here's another one. You're already trying to tell a story, but now that kid just came out of an airplane. You are always, always, always trying to tell a story. Why? Because a story takes order. A story is chronology. Remember, you're always seeking order. Put things in order, and now story places you inside of that order. Because right now, I'm the dad. You might be the pilot. You might not know who you are, but you're identifying with something in there. So now you have order, which you're always seeking. Now you have story, which means you can now enter that order. And that gives potential for change and revelation. Thirdly, what compels me to create? We create because we require a voice. And I thought about changing that terminology because right now we're using require a voice for other purposes. And it's kind of becoming, I don't want to say a cliche, an idiom. So maybe I would rephrase it. I just couldn't lose the alliteration and the symmetry there, of course. You understand. But maybe I could have phrased it, we need to be heard. And you know what? When I was watching those slides at the beginning, first of all, you all know this, but because pictures and images are ubiquitous in our society, it's easy for us to lose the value of them, okay? But you could take any one of those images. They were very powerful, were they not? Very, very powerful images. I could hear Nathaniel in his image. I could feel myself being heard when my image came up. I could hear myself heard through someone else's image coming up. These are powerful, powerful moments. We are being put into a story. We are put into order, and our voice is being heard. We require being heard. So if we require, oh yes, of course, we should throw the Imagine Dragons in here real quick. Extra. Should have cut it. Shouldn't have made the final cut. We require order. We require story. We require voice, which means we require love. So what we're really seeking when we're seeking order, it's really what we're seeking when we're seeking identity. It's really what we're seeking when we're seeking story. We're seeking to be heard. We're seeking love. And back to the point that I made earlier about Helen having the satisfaction of just bringing us together. I don't know about you, but sometimes I can't stand these events because I didn't even say hi to David today. But when David walked in the door, I was like, love that guy. And it wasn't just David, so you're not special. But the point is, our creative acts are acts of love. We are giving it and we are receiving it when we create. Therefore, you will wake up tomorrow, I will wake up tomorrow, and we will create. Let's go to the second question. Why must it hurt to create? Because the truth is always painful. And Helen hit this in her speech. I'm going to go to Henry David Thoreau for this one. Truth and roses both have thorns about them. You're never going to get to something truly valuable, truly authentic, truly sincere without hitting a thorn. If you stay out of the discomfort zone and try to be creative, your work is going to be trivial. And it's not going to change lives. And it's not going to exhibit love. Why must it hurt to create? The truth is painful, number one. Number two, knowledge is inevitably shallow. I know. Knowledge is power. Go get your education. get the PhD. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't take you all the way there. If knowledge took you all the way there, we wouldn't have poetry, we wouldn't have art, we wouldn't have theater, we wouldn't. There is something bigger that knowledge can't get to. In fact, we're going to go back to Thoreau. So when Thoreau, a series of writings that Henry David Thoreau penned while he took his first visit to Cape Cod, and he was overwhelmed with the beauty. And where is all your knowledge gone to? He says to himself when he is visiting Cape Cod. It evaporates completely, for it has no depth. The things that we're requiring deeply, knowledge can't get to all of them. Why must it hurt to create? Number 3, creation is consumptive. Now, we hear that word consumptive and we think consumption and we think disease and all that, but just want to give you a little etymology on this because I penned that and then I went back and looked at this and I was like, wait, am I right? Is it actually consumptive or is that just a disease? No, it's truly appropriate here. To be affected by a wasting disease is what the word has come to be known as, but of course its root is that the consumptive was a thing, a medical agent designed to eliminate the disease. So the medicine consumes the disease. Genuine and authentic creativity consumes the pride, consumes the shame, consumes the guilt, consumes the self-consciousness, consumes the breach between you and me. It's a consumptive. But in doing those things, it will also tend to consume your life. So this creative impulse can be healing, but it can also be harmful. I came across a book while preparing this, and I know that you're never supposed to have slides with this many words on them. Sorry. But I thought this was fitting, and I'm not advertising for the book because I haven't read it. I just did a quote pull. As powerful as it is, creative obsession can be a troubling occupation. Left unchecked, it causes obstacles, even self-destruction. It can raise a standard so far beyond acceptable that nobody can meet it, causing a creative block. Many people become slaves to these obsessions, caving into the impulse to push for perfection. Sometimes, if they're lucky, this results in a complete piece of work. Many other times, though, it causes the work to self-destruct. What's left unsaid here, we all know it. And it also can cause the life to self-destruct. How many artist bios can we look back in history and see it was destructive? I know, it was the lead in the paint. I think it was that and more. So the premise of this book, which again, I haven't read, is that if you have this creative instinct and you have absolutely no opportunity to vent it, to express it, it will become obsessive and it will damage you. And pulling the curtain aside, I was severely damaged 20 years ago. Severely damaged by my obsessive creativity, which I lived with 24/7, 365. I thought that I would create better if I let my mind endlessly obsess over my creative challenges. Find a way to express. Helen has done that for us. Don't just think about it. I don't care if that painting looks terrible when you're done. I don't care if that poetry is drivel. You need to do. Garrison Keillor said, the one thing I hate most about being a writer is sometimes I have to sit down at my desk and write. You have to do. And the third question, how can it be worth it to create? Because it is a little painful. First of all, it's your purpose. And I'm not going to deliberate here. Well, I'm out of time, for one. But I think I've expressed that. It is your purpose. It is in you. I'd go back to point one. It is in you. You have to find story. You have to find order. You have to find a voice. You have to find a way to give somebody else a voice. Why is all this in you? Because you are compelled to love the world and love yourself. And your way of doing that, your tools for doing that, are through your creative instinct. I don't care if it hurts because it's beautiful. Secondly, it is your sanctity. What do I mean by that? You're going to purify, and I was supposed to refer to the artworks that I use as background, but I use this one in particular because I think it expresses this. There is junk in your life. Am I right? Is your life messy? Is it full of junk? Yes. I'm going to answer for you. Yes. Your creative act will force you, if you commit to it, if you come to terms with it, it will force you to shed some of the pride. It will force you to be a little more confident in front of the camera when you're just feeling ashamed and you're just thinking you don't look good enough. It will sanctify you. It will slowly take the junk out and help you come to terms with it. Thirdly, creation is your love. You need purpose, sanctity, and love. I'm going to finish with the David Mamet. We could not stop ourselves from doing it, from renovating the house, jumping into the old factory district, taking an old basket, and then consigning the timeless thing to the round of time, which is to say death. But at least we weren't working in an office all day long, right? Well, actually, we were working in an office all day long, and then we were carrying that office home with us in our heads and into the evenings and into the night and driving our families crazy with the dreariness of our concerns for the hidden, for the exquisite, for the beautiful. Who do we think we were? And how useful was it, finally, as much as we, full of pride, looked at all those who toiled and spun to no effect or purpose whatsoever other than the accumulation of gold and status and power when compared to the thrill that we, artists, felt at these discoveries we made. And so we turned to anyone who suggested that our work was merely a toy or a flywheel of our society, spinning off excess steam. And weren't we presumptuous children that we were to assume that our work had some use in this society? Though, of course, none of us did it because it had use. We did it because we had an idea, because we needed to create. We did it because, like the businessman, like the developer, we could not help ourselves. Because sometimes an individual is thrown up who does not fit into the norm. One reads of, I'm just going to skip over this because my time is fleeting. So I was always confused by the verse, consider the lilies of the field. They neither toil nor do they spin, and yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these lilies. And over the years, whenever I would hear that, I would think of this verse, and it would seem to me an indictment of labor and talent, or perhaps of both, or of fortune. But then finally, after many years in creative work, this proverb made sense to me. It seemed that perhaps it's weak, and even in praise of weakness and humility. I'd not thought of that phrase for some time. I'd passed my 40th year, and it came to my mind in conjunction with these thoughts, and I understood it. I had changed since the last time I thought of it, and I said, of course it's an indictment. It's a gentle indictment of prideful love of labor or your talent, or the pride that neglects what to the author of the phrase is obvious, that both labor and talent and ambition and reward are all gifts. that creation of these differing professions, these differing pursuits, these differing levels of achievement in the arts, taken to its logical extreme, all of this is the exact opposite of the random view. And I've always felt proud and not a little arrogant that I was one of those freaks privileged to live in the world of the arts. And as I become older, I feel still happy and quite privileged to be working in an area where I am happy, but I hope, a bit less proud, after all, and increasingly awed by the way this universe has been thoughtfully construed to include even a freak like me. Wake up tomorrow and create.